In our last few episodes, we've been discussing various aspects of suicide. And there's been a number of comments that have been made uh, on the socials. And I want to address some of those today in the subject of why we have to talk about suicide. It is a problem that is not going away. It is a problem that is getting bigger and bigger. And we as a society are going to have to change the way that we think about suicide and talk about suicide so that we can start addressing the issues. It is an epidemic. Wherever you look about the stats of suicide, it is incomprehensible how many people are choosing suicide as an option. Shattered the podcast is all about having the conversations that are hard to have. And today we're going to talk about why I've been talking about suicide. That's on STP right now. Let's dive in, see what happens. Welcome to Shattered the podcast. STP is the story of my journey from the depths of mental illness to a place where I could live again. Okie dokie, g'day and welcome to Shattered the podcast. As I mentioned, we are discussing why we need to talk about suicide. The statistics are staggering. The amount of people that are taking their own lives is growing. It's not shrinking. The people that are making attempts is growing. And it doesn't really make sense when you think about it. We live in a day and age where poverty isn't really a thing. It exists and some people struggle with it, and we need to address that. But we live in an age where information is freely available to us. We have resources that are very, very easy to access. Resources such as information, resources such as help-seeking services. And yet, the rate of suicide keeps growing. When you think about the mindset of a person that has chosen to try and take their life, these are people that can see no other future, no better future. They have no hope for what's to come. They are desperate, they're alone, and they're in pain, and we're not doing anything about it. A couple of people have asked me why I speak about suicide, why I talk about it. It seems like something that we're all very aware of and it doesn't need to be spoken. But whenever there is a celebrity death, whenever some famous person dies and there's the potential that they've killed themselves, the article won't say that. They'll say there was no suspicious circumstances. They'll say that, it doesn't look like a homicide. And we're left to guess. So was it a heart attack? Was it a suicide? Was it this? Was it that? And I think that contributes to this thought that suicide is this thing that we can't talk about. I was once on radio and a lady was telling me about, in an interview, she was telling me about how she attempted to take her life. We went off air and I said, I've tried to as well. And she high-fived me. It was just so nice to talk to somebody that understood and was willing to talk about it, that wasn't ashamed of the subject and wasn't ashamed of her because she'd made an attempt. Until we as a society can choose to say, all right, let's talk about suicide. Let's start saying, look, if this famous person did kill themselves, why did they kill themselves? Let's not try and hide it or pretend it didn't happen. Let's say, okay, well, they may have had a mental illness. They may have s- struggled with drug addiction. They may have family problems, may have something. I think it would be better to be more open about this stuff so that people could talk about it. Now, I know that the fear is that if we talk about suicide, people are going to copy. If we talk about how Kurt Cobain killed himself, other kids are going to kill themselves the same way. And maybe a couple might. But maybe if we talk about that suicide and we talk about how unnecessary it was and how much help was available to that person, how their resources were virtually infinite, they had a whole world of options and they didn't take any of them, why not? I think it's more dangerous to not talk about that stuff. Oh, look, if somebody is successful and as popular and as well known as, say, an Anthony Bourdain or a Chester Billington or a or somebody like that, if they can take themselves their own life, if they can feel so desperately sad that they took their own life, what hope do I have? I'm not as successful. I'm not as rich. I don't have the resources. And clearly, if they didn't have the resources, surely they're not available to me, which is not true. There's been people that have accused me of doing clickbait, of trying to get watchers for this channel to somehow, I don't know, emotionally blackmail people into growing this channel. And that's not what STP is about. I mean, frankly, I don't really care how many people listen, as long as one person does. Maybe that one person hears something that we say on this channel and goes, all right, there's something in that that I can use. There's a mistake that Mark made that maybe I won't make now. That is my hope through STP. We aren't the final conversation. We aren't the be all and end all. We aren't going to solve suicide. But we can be another voice that's out there just saying, hey, it's okay to talk about this stuff. My daughter and I talk about each other's suicide attempts, why it was stupid. At times we joke about it, and it's uncomfortable for people around us. We'll talk about ending up in the psych ward and how horrible it was, and, how much we're looking forward to going back there anytime soon. For us, it's that dark humor that allows us to communicate about it, to talk about it. It's given us an avenue to say, all right, when you're getting back to a place where you feel the same way, I know how that feels. You're not alone. So just reach out. I'm not going to reject you. I'm not going to send you away. I'm going to hear you and I'm going to appreciate exactly what it is that you're telling me so that I can respond the way that you need me to. We must talk about suicide because if we don't, if we continue to pretend that it's this hidden, shameful, unknown, weird, out there thing that happens to random people, we're never going to get to a point where we can have open, honest, and clear communication about it. I encourage you, join the conversation. If you want to, subscribe, like, share, whatever, but just make sure that you're being part of the conversation, that you're putting your hand up and saying, I'm not ashamed to talk about this. I care enough about the impossible tragedy of people taking their lives. I care about it enough to want to be part of the conversation. I do hope that you'll join us in that conversation. Next week is going to be a hard one. I've got a number of interviews coming up. We're going to have conversations with people from around the world. I'm very excited to bring those to you. But we are going to continue talking about suicide. It's important, and I know it's important because of the comments that we've been getting. People reaching out, people questioning, people even getting mad at me for talking about suicide. It's all legitimate, and it's all part of the conversation, and I'm glad that we're having it. Have a great week. I will talk to you again soon. Bye for now. Hey, thanks for joining us on Shattered the Podcast. I'm Mark. Special thanks to my producer, Meredith Brosnan, and also to Torian, Kevin, and Lorraine. And we can't forget the amazing band Adelaide, who let us use their song as our theme. For more information, check us out on all your socials, STP Shattered the Podcast.